Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. Kosovo's European integration journey has been a focal point in the Western Balkans, with reforms and developments aimed at aligning the country with EU standards. From visa liberalization to regional dialogue, Kosovo's progress reflects its ambitions to solidify its role in Europe. Amid ongoing challenges in regional stability and economic growth, its aspirations for EU membership remain steadfast. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss these topics is Besnik Bislimi, First Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Kosovo. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here.
So first, when it comes to European integration process, the Commission's 2024 reports on Kosovo highlights significant reforms. So can you elaborate on some of the key areas where Kosovo has made the most progress?
Well, despite the fact that Kosovo is the only country that still doesn't have the candidate status, but is considered as a potential candidate, our progress is being measured on an annual basis for almost 20 years. And as you already mentioned, for this year, the report really recognizes the huge progress that Kosovo has made. According to an independent comparison that European Stability Initiative has prepared for all 9 candidate countries on Kosovo, Kosovo had the second fastest progress during 2023. And what is more important, this progress has been shown in some crucial areas that are relevant when you measure the convergence of the living standards and the quality of the economy towards EU. For example, Kosovo has shown good progress and relatively good preparedness for EU on the areas of free movement of goods, free movement of capital, also in crucial instruments like customs policy, tax authority, procurement law. We were also performing relatively good in key macroeconomic policies, like, for example, monetary policy, sustainable growth, and regional development. So these are some areas which pretty much also correspond to the key pillar of our government policy for this mandate. When we started our government in March 2021, we identified two key pillars of our involvement. One of them was job creation or the economy. The second one was rule of law. And I think in both of these two pillars, our performance was above average and above the expectations, both domestically and internationally.
Right, from 2021 to now, we already saw leaps and bounds in progress. Now, with also the visa liberalization actually being implemented now, how do you foresee that impacting Kosovo's economy and kind of social movement?
Well, if you look at the growth rate for this year, we see that pretty much the visa liberalization process is starting to show the positive impact. And our expectation for the next year is even more optimistic. So we expect to have a growth rate of our income of more than 5%, which will be among the top growth rates in Europe. This shows that we had an untapped potential so far, which comes from the closer integration of our business community internationally. We have companies that were able to compete internationally and have maybe even comparative advantages, but due to the inability to implement some projects, as the use of labor force for this short-term project was impossible, it was always a problem. It was also a problem for Kosovo businesses to participate in different international affairs where you could build a network. Now all these barriers are being removed, and we see that our business community, but also citizens, especially youth, are making the maximum use of this new opportunity for them.
Right, and you mentioned earlier that Kosovo unfortunately still doesn't have formal EU candidacy status. So do you foresee a timeline where that will come into fruition, given all that kind of advancements and all the progress that the country has been seeing?
Well, Kosovo has submitted the request or the application for the candidate status on December 15th, 2022. So very soon we will have the second year completed, in which our application has not been treated yet. Unfortunately, we had this constellation of different developments that were not foreseen before, like the unjustified war in Ukraine, aggression in Ukraine, but also the energy crisis related to this, so that also our EU allies had to deal with some other priorities. But we believe that now we are entering in a year that can be really promising, not only for Kosovo, but for the whole enlargement process. We have with Poland a new country that takes presidency of the Council, and our expectations are relatively high that Poland will play its decisive role on this crucial process, which is not only important from the economic and political perspective, but it's becoming increasingly relevant also from the security perspective. You know that Western Balkans traditionally were affected by tensions. We had tensions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we had tensions in Montenegro, we had tensions in Kosovo. Somehow, despite the fact that we have 3 regions with tensions, all of them have the same source, and the source sits in Belgrade. Pretty much all conflicts in the last 100 years in the region were initiated by Belgrade. And we believe that the faster the acceleration towards EU integration, the smaller will be the potentials for new tensions. There is no better way to stabilize the region than to help it integrate faster in the EU. There are 2 moments that show pretty much to what extent the region is prepared for this challenge. Last year, European Commission introduced a new instrument, the growth plan for the Western Balkans. And it's amazing how fast we reached this consensus among EU member countries to adopt this instrument and offer it to the candidate countries from the Western Balkans. But there was one thing that moved even faster than EU Commission. This was the ability of Western Balkan 6 countries to prepare the reform agenda, which was required by this growth plan, which shows that Western Balkan countries are ready to knock on the door as soon as the window of opportunity is opened. And the second is related to SEPA, the single Euro payment area. As parallel activity to the growth plan initiative, we wanted to see to what extent region can get incorporated in additional instruments of the EU, which will help them reduce cost of doing business and increase competitiveness. And at the beginning, when we started this initiative back in March of this year, we could not believe that this process could end so fast. But now we have, after 6 months, 2 countries that are expected to join very soon, Montenegro and Albania. And Kosovo has also submitted 10 days ago the pre-application, which shows that we can increase our path and our speed as soon as the window is opened and we see the readiness of EU for enlargement. So there is a momentum. The only question is to what extent all of us will be able to build the consensus of the maximum utilization of this momentum.
Right. Consensus is the key word right here, because we do know that countries such as Cyprus, Romania, Spain still aren't fully on board with recognition. Do you think that's going to be a hurdle going forward? Are there any ways in convincing them that perhaps Kosovo is ready for membership?
There are 5 countries that still have not recognized Kosovo, 5 countries among the EU27. Of course, for us, it's of crucial importance that we don't have this hurdle in our relationship with any of the member countries of EU. However, we do understand the internal complexities of these countries that have created the environment for this position. However, for your information, back in 2016, all EU countries were able to build a consensus, which included differences with respect to recognition, but the consensus in allowing Kosovo to progress on the path to EU. And this consensus helped us sign the Stabilization and Association Agreement with the EU, which meant that Kosovo can still improve the quality of institutions, can improve the economy, can improve the living standards. And we are currently in the 8th year of implementing our SAA, which shows that pretty much we are at this point much better prepared for the opening of chapters or clusters than any other country that entered into EU in the last 20 years at the moment when they received the candidate status. For example, there are countries in the Western Balkan that received the candidate status only 2 or 3 weeks after they signed the SAA, so without any implementation. But now we have already 8 years of successfully implementing both the SAA through national plans, but also through economic European reform agendas 1 and 2, which shows that Kosovo is ready. The only thing that needs to be done, and we really trust that Poland will play its decisive role during its presidency is to convince countries that at this point it's crucial that Kosovo receives the questionnaire so that our preparedness is assessed, so that we know our home assignment, and then we can even talk on deadlines for closing these chapters. We need to understand that EU will not be complete until all Western Balkan countries are into the EU, and partial integration will not solve the key problems with which EU is faced right now.
Right, so it does sound like a lot of these benchmarks Kosovo have not only met, but have already gone above and beyond the threshold required for the European Union. And now the question remains, some of these countries that still have a holdout and, of course, can really not address the elephant in the room, the conflict between Kosovo and Serbia. Now, it's been a year after the Ohrid agreement, and there's still relatively low commitment from both Kosovo and Serbia to its implementation. What are some of the challenges, and do you think there's any way that there can be any sort of consensus?
There is one sentence in your introduction to this topic with which I would not agree, where you say there is not a lot of consensus in both countries to implement this. Kosovo has stated hundreds of times that we see the agreement as very important, the basic agreement on the path to normalization, that we are willing to implement the agreement in its entirety. All we need is that this agreement gets legal certainty, and that for the implementation, we agree to implement it in its entirety. This agreement is not a Swedish desk where you can pick up only elements of it. Agreement only makes sense in its entirety. So you cannot say, I will cherry pick and do one thing because I expect to rip up the benefits of the agreement. And so far, it's only one country that has refused to recognize the existence of the agreement. It's only one country that has refused to sign the agreement, and is the only country that is actively violating the agreement. Kosovo has showed the willingness also to actively participate in all discussions in Brussels that are dealing with the single question on how to sequence the implementation of the agreement. We have so far developed 10 drafts of the sequencing. In all of these 10 drafts developed by the special representative, Kosovo has submitted its comments. The other side has never submitted any comment, which means that you have one side that is willing, but the agreement cannot be implemented unilaterally. We need both parties. Actually, if you carefully look at the first drafts of the sequencing plan, it says that for this agreement to be implemented, the most important part was for Kosovo to agree on a date for the presentation of the draft statute of the ASM. And this was an agreement reached back in 2013. And for EU, it was crucial that Kosovo agree on a date. And then in that draft, you will see that after that agreement, Serbia will have to do the first step. So the sequence means you do one step, then Serbia does the rest. And as soon as we would complete one step in the implementation, instead of having Serbia start with this implementation, we have a new draft sequence developed by Brussels that says, no, you have to do another first step. But I think it's not fair to Kosovo to say that both parties did not show willingness to implement. We believe that this agreement helps to stabilize the region. We also believe that Kosovo will be the main beneficiary of a stabilized region. So it will be contradictory and self-defeating if Kosovo would obstruct the implementation of an agreement from which it sees huge benefits.
Right. So it does seem like, the dialogue still needs to move forward. And like you mentioned, perhaps we do need to also see the willingness to come to the negotiation table from the other side. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. And thanks again for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.